Do you want to have sex with a girl who looks like this? What about this one? Or what about her? If your answer is anything other than a confident fuck yes, then stop watching this video right now and go get your testosterone levels checked. But if you're a healthy, red-blooded man who loves sex and loves women, and if you'd like to have sex with a lot of young, hot women in a very short amount of time, then keep watching. Because in this tutorial, I'm going to reveal the ultimate secret to getting beautiful girls in your bed, literally begging you to fuck them using the forbidden secrets of Buddhist black magic, also known as Occult Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism, Diamond Vehicle Buddhist Sorcery. This is a renegade and antinomian form of Buddhism, perfected by the evil sorcerers of medieval Tibet, which rejects the pursuit of enlightenment and nirvana and focuses instead on using the occult knowledge gained in meditation practice to acquire power. If conventional Buddhist masters are like the Jedi of the Star Wars universe, these Tibetan Buddhist sorcerers are more like the Sith. Classical Buddhist practitioners aim to dissolve their ego and eliminate their selfish desires, so they can escape the suffering of the world and transcend the cycle of death and rebirth. Tantric Buddhist sorcerers, on the other hand, take a very different view. Their goal is not inner peace, but intensity. And far from seeking to control their passions, they aim at exactly the opposite. They deliberately inflame their passions and their selfish desires, such as anger, hatred, pride, envy, and lust, because it gives them a magical potency, which allows them to bend reality to their will and to acquire power, influence, and ultimately immortality in the form of a diamond body, an occult second body which gives the tantric master supernatural powers and which allows him to survive the death of his physical body and go on living as a transpersonal demonic entity. And in this video, I'll reveal how to use these Sith Lord Buddhist magic techniques to seduce beautiful women, even if you're unattractive, short, ugly, broke, shy, fat, skinny, too old, too young, how to have all the sex you could ever want, and how to develop a hypnotic and mesmerizing aura and a personal magnetism that makes people your willing slaves. I've personally used these techniques to sleep with over 100 girls over the past decade, despite the fact that I am average or ugly looking, balding and going gray with a big nose, a weak chin, and acne scars. This is not AI. I'm a real person. This is my real voice, and you can see pictures of me on screen right now with some of my past and current girlfriends and buddies. These are girls who are objectively way out of my league in looks, yet I pulled these girls and hundreds more like them and made them fall in love with me using the very techniques we're going to be discussing in this video. These are techniques which give you an aura, a sort of personal intensity and a mystique which makes you irresistible to beautiful women. And the secret to doing this, like I said, the big idea which we're going to be covering in detail in today's video, which is as long as a feature-length film, is what I call Buddhist sorcery or Buddhist black magic. And right away, I want to explain this. What exactly is black magic and what is the black magic of Buddhism specifically? Black magic has been defined in many different ways, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to define it as the magic of inversion. And this is the essence of what Tantric Buddhism is all about. To invert something means to turn it upside down, inside out. You know, the classic kind of corny example that you're probably already familiar with is how Western black magicians will invert traditional Christian imagery as part of their rituals and symbolism. You've probably seen so-called Satanists using upside down crucifixes or practicing a black mass. And this is a cheesy example, but it does demonstrate the basic idea that black magic, at least in theory, is essentially taking some sacred value or cherished principle and inverting it in order to generate energy. Now, the little fly in the ointment here is that the magic of inversion only works if you actually believe in the thing that you're inverting to begin with, although that's a topic for another time. But at any rate, Buddhist black magic refers to a system of magic which takes as its starting point all the core principles and assumptions of Buddhism and inverts them. For example, Buddhism teaches that the only way to reach enlightenment is to kill your ego, and this is true. And yet Buddhist black magic practices precisely the opposite. This is not about killing your ego, it's about empowering your ego, strengthening your ego and making it bigger. This is not about controlling your selfish desires or abolishing your passions. On the contrary, it's about amplifying those desires, inflaming your passions even further in order to generate energy. Now, this is a very nuanced topic, and there's a lot of people who are going to completely misunderstand this video, so I want to clear something up right now at the outset. What I'm going to be presenting you with here, what I'm going to be arguing in favor of, is essentially a kind of anti-Buddhism. It's a philosophy of anti-spirituality. Now, on that basis, you might assume that I think Buddhism is wrong or that it doesn't work or I'm against it in some way, and I'm not. This is the thing you absolutely have to understand before we go on. Buddhism works. Buddhism does exactly what it claims to do. If you follow its principles and techniques, it will bring you to exactly the result that it promises, namely enlightenment, nirvana, invincible indescribable states of inner peace, bliss, and tranquility. It can also give you, in a rather unpredictable way, certain kinds of superpowers or cities, clairvoyance, clairaudience, telepathy, etc. So understand right away, everything I'm going to be showing you here is basically anti-Buddhism. And yet I'm not saying that Buddhism is wrong or bad or that it's not effective. It absolutely is effective. And like I said, following its principles is the fastest and most reliable path there is to experiencing enlightenment. And that word enlightenment is critical to understand before we go on. What actually is enlightenment? Enlightenment, as the Buddha himself defined it, is simply the end of suffering.
One thing do I teach, O my disciples, suffering and deliverance from suffering. It was in this way that Gautama the Buddha, living in the 6th century BC, gave the gist of his whole teaching. And it's for this reason that many commentators and critics of Buddhism have called it a way of escape, because of its tremendous concern with the problem of human pain as the fundamental problem of life.
Enlightenment is the end of suffering, the absence of suffering. That's it. It simply means you don't feel negative emotions anymore. It's no more exotic or exalted than that. Buddha recognized that all life, all existence is suffering, dukkha, unsatisfactory. And he discovered and taught the only possible way out of that suffering, which is, in short, to recognize that yourself does not exist, to abolish your ego, and with this will come the dissolution of all your desires and also all your unpleasant emotions. And that is what Hinayana Buddhism, classical Buddhism, the original form of Buddhism, will show you how to do if you want that. And I really want to emphasize here, this is not a false promise that Buddhism makes. It's not hype. You really can completely end your suffering. You can reach a point where you no longer feel any unpleasant emotions almost ever, even if everything else in your external life goes wrong. Even if you lose your job, become homeless, lose everything, you can still be in states of indescribable inner bliss and tranquility. And people have done this. It is attainable. If you want to learn to do this, and if you're a native English speaker, I'd really recommend reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. This is by far the best, the easiest guide on reaching enlightenment there is. Again, if you're a native English speaker. If you understand Sanskrit or Pali, then maybe go to the classical Buddhist texts. But if you don't understand those languages, I'd really go with someone like Eckhart Tolle. It just makes it much simpler, more straightforward. And it's not even actually that complicated to get there. You know, again, enlightenment is simply the absence of suffering. That's what the Buddha came to teach. That's what Buddhism is all about. And you can achieve this if you want to. It doesn't need to take years necessarily. You don't need to give up everything and go live in a monastery. So as I said, you know, read The Power of Now, watch Eckhart Tolle's videos on YouTube. Maybe after that, read The Way of Zen by Alan Watts. And then maybe you can go deeper on some of the older texts, the actual ancient texts of Buddhism. But if you follow the techniques, the principles that someone like Eckhart Tolle or Alan Watts talk about, such as, you know, observing your thoughts, observing the thinker, cultivating awareness of your body, your sensations, if you do these things, you can completely remove all negative emotions from your life. And you're not necessarily going to be in a state of pure bliss all the time, although it does happen sometimes, but you will and you can achieve a state of complete and invincible inner peace no matter what the circumstances of life throw at you. And that is what enlightenment is. Now, what's the problem with this? Why would we possibly want to go against this? You know, having attained this priceless pearl that is enlightenment, which is actually the secret gold, the buried treasure that all great religious teachers and mystics have sought and promoted for millennia, having received this priceless treasure of enlightenment and having tasted it, why would we ever want to throw it away? Well, what it all comes down to is this. Enlightenment is all well and good if you're ready to die. If you're a very old man, if you're reaching the end of your life, or if you're not necessarily old, but you've already accomplished everything you set out to do here, you know, you're already rich. You're already established in your career. Maybe you already have a family. And now, in this second half of your life, you're ready to let go and ascend to a higher state of being. Then yes, in that case, enlightenment, bliss, inner peace, it's all very good. And at that point, you know, you may as well go live in a monastery or go live a very quiet, humble life in the countryside with your wife maybe, and devote your time to deepening your spiritual practice. If you're a young man, however, if you are not established in the world yet, if you haven't yet done the things you came here to do, then enlightenment, Buddhism, Stoicism, spirituality, mysticism, all of these things, they're like cutting your dick off if you're a young man. It's a self-castration, a self-neutering. And the reason why, and I'm speaking from over 10 years of experience with this, when you have achieved enlightenment, which again, simply means the end of suffering, and it's not difficult to do. Anyone can do this if they actually apply themselves. But when you have achieved enlightenment, the one one drawback of that which you're going to run into, the monkey's paw. The only downside of it is that you are going to feel almost no motivation to do anything anymore. In other words, as equanimity goes up, motivation goes down. And this is like a law of physics, okay? You will never find this to be violated. The happier you are, the more content you are, the more at peace you are, the less motivation you are going to feel to win and compete. And this is because, as a man, all of your energy, all of your juice, all your life force, your will to win, it only comes from negative emotions. It can only come from your dark side, from the ego, your shadow. All of the defiling emotions and sins which the religions deride, pride, envy, jealousy, lust, wrath. These instincts and these alone are what actually give you the will to overcome adversity and to win. Get rid of these defiling passions, which is what enlightenment will do, and you are going to lose the will to win. You are going to lose the will to compete, and eventually, over a long enough timeline, you are going to lose the will to live. I have met people, I know people, teachers of mine, great mentors, heroes of mine even. They reach a point with enlightenment where they are essentially just waiting to die. And they will tell you this. You know, it's an attitude of, okay, I've seen enough. I've done what I came here to do. I'm ready to go now. I'm ready to go home. That's what spirituality is. Every spiritual path, every religion is leading towards this point. It's about dying to the world, dying to your worldly desires and passions, which keep you tethered here. And it's about then ascending to heaven or nirvana or Pure Land or Buddha field, whatever spiritual tradition you follow has different words for this. What it is not about is winning here and now in this world. It's not about competing in this world. It is about escaping this world, which they consider to be a prison or even a torture chamber. What we're going to be talking about in this video is the exact opposite of that. We are not concerned with liberation or enlightenment or transcending the material world. What we care about here, all we care about, is how to win. How to win with women, how to win the mating game, the game of natural selection by having sex with as many beautiful girls as possible, and how to win the game of capitalism, how to get rich, be successful in life, how to establish yourself as a man, and how to live a life that is completely on your own terms. A life where you don't have to answer to anybody. You're autonomous, free, powerful, independent. Tantric Buddhism is not for saints. It's for pirates, brigands, outlaws, adventurers, buccaneers. This is not about enlightenment. It's not about spirituality. This is about vitality, energy, life force, passion, personal intensity. And if you want these things, if you want power in life, if you want success, freedom, autonomy, if you want to win, you are going to have to harness your ego. That's the whole point. You are going to have to harness your dark side, your shadow, your most selfish and petty desires. You cannot afford to get rid of these things. Not if you want to be competitive. If you want money, if you want women, if you want a girlfriend who looks good in a bikini, you are going to have to harness your dark side and you're going to have to ride it until the fucking wheels fall off. Hate to be the one to break it to you, but you cannot get these things as an average guy in this day and age without going to a dark place. Enlightenment, inner peace, being happy. This is not going to get you sex with models. It's not going to make you rich. Again, hate to be the one to tell you. To get those things, you've got to be miserable. You've got to be a fucking black hole of dark energy, a walking, talking bundle of neuroses. You've got to be inflamed by passion and by the most ignoble and unenlightened mental states there are, like ego, spite, pride, vanity, envy, jealousy, pique, wrath, lust, anger, frustration, the desire for revenge or vindication. These are what give you the fuel you need to succeed as a man. Nothing else. These are what actually give you the juice you need to take action, to get shit done, and to win. So again, enlightenment is great. Inner peace, bliss, happiness. These are all great things to experience from time to time, almost like taking a vacation. You know, mindfulness, surrender, letting go, the power of now, healing your trauma. These things are all wonderful. But the one thing they will not give you is energy, vitality, passion, the juice to take action and overcome apathy and actually succeed. Now, I've used that term, the juice, a lot. I'm going to be using it a lot more. What do I mean by the juice? The juice is your passion. It's your drive, your desire. It's the opposite of apathy. It's the will to win. And the number one problem with men today is precisely this. They lack the juice. They lack the desire. They don't have that oomph that you need to win. And that oomph, that juice, comes from your ego, 100%. And so the elephant in the room here, the big throbbing red fucking problem with Buddhism, with Stoicism, and with spirituality in general, is that if you follow these practices, if you abolish your ego, if you abolish your passions and desires, you are going to make this problem worse, not better. because it is precisely your ego and your petty desires and passions that give you the juice you need to win as a man. Ego is what gives you that oomph. It's what gives you personal intensity. And this is what makes you magnetic. This is what gives you aura. It gives you a certain forcefulness and a mystique that women are irresistibly drawn to in a man. The other dirty little secret here is that women do not want saints. They don't want Stoic philosophers. They don't want a man who's abolished all his emotions. On the contrary, what women want, what they crave, what actually gets them horny, wet, between their legs on a physiological level is when a man has passion, personal intensity. And those things can only come from your dark side. Your magnetism, your aura, it all comes from your animalistic side and from your passions. The very passions that Buddhism and Stoicism are explicitly designed to snuff out. Now, what's interesting though, is that there is actually a species of Buddhism that recognizes this. It's known as Vajrayana Buddhism or Tantric Buddhism. It's sometimes also called Occult Buddhism, and it's especially prominent in Tibet. The word Vajra means diamond. It can also mean a thunderbolt or lightning, and Yana means vehicle. And so Vajrayana Buddhism roughly translates as diamond vehicle Buddhism or thunderbolt vehicle Buddhism. And one of the core ideas of the diamond vehicle, one of the things that makes it so unique, both within Buddhism but also among all spiritual paths, is that it addresses precisely what we've been talking about here. In diamond vehicle Buddhism, the aim is not to abolish negative mental states like pride, lust, anger, jealousy, envy, etc. On the contrary, they actually play with deliberately inflaming and amplifying those negative emotions so that they can be transmuted into energy. Or as they sometimes put it, the poison is the cure. And so the Mahasiddha, the grand sorcerers of Thunderbolt Vehicle Tibetan Buddhism, their whole premise, their modus operandi is actually very close to what I've been saying here. And so if you want to compare this Vajrayana Buddhism with the older forms of Buddhism, it is actually a little bit like the Jedi versus the Sith in Star Wars. The Sith order is depicted as an ancient cult of warriors who draw strength from the dark side of the Force and use it to seize power by any means necessary. Sith teach their apprentices to revere the dark side and to give full rein to their aggressive emotions such as rage and hatred. The goal of the Sith is tangible greatness, the ability to shape or destroy a world according to one's will. The goal of the Jedi, by contrast, is moral goodness, freedom from inner turmoil and selfish desires. But the Sith consider the Jedi's aspirations to be either hopeless or pathetic. To the Sith, achieving greater power, following one's passion, and freedom from inhibition are seen as more authentic ways of expressing the Force. Now, obviously, this is a bit of an oversimplification. It's not quite that straightforward with Vajrayana versus Hinayana Buddhism, but it does actually demonstrate one of the underlying philosophical differences of these two schools of Buddhism quite well. This is the dichotomy between equanimity versus passion, or spirituality versus vitality. Saying no to life versus saying yes to life. And this comes up everywhere, even in Western philosophy. Schopenhauer says no, Nietzsche says yes, Buddha says no, Vajrayana sorcerers say yes. So you can either have inner peace or you can have passion and vitality, the will to actually get things done. And what I would like to submit to you is that these two things actually are mutually exclusive to some considerable degree. Meaning, yes, you can have both. You can experience both these states of being at different points in your life, but you can't have both at once. At any given time, depending on the situation, depending on what your aims are, you do have to choose one and reject the other. You have to choose. Do I want more peace right now, or do I want more passion? Because when you turn up the dial on one, by definition, you are turning down the dial on the other. All right, so that's a basic introduction to the overall philosophy of this. What I want to get into next is how to put this into practice, and specifically how to use this system of Buddhist black magic to get beautiful girlfriends, casual sex buddies, to get your own harem, and how to do this even if you're average looking or ugly, short, unattractive, old, young, broke, whatever. Now, what I'm going to be teaching you here is primarily how to get girls through cold approach. That is, walking up to complete strangers, whether at a bar, a restaurant, or on the street, and how to charm that girl and get her to come with you and have sex that same day. However, if you hate approaching women or you're too lazy to approach women, there is a way to get women to approach you. In fact, the last two girls I had sex with actually both approached me first. One of them was 22, blonde, slim, tall, graceful girl, really cute, absolute nympho in bed. The other girl was a knockout Iranian chick, 26 years old, gorgeous face, double D boobs, curves in all the right places. And like I said, both of these girls actually approached me first, despite the fact that I'm in my 30s, balding, going gray, I'm not a good looking guy, and yet I regularly have very hot girls coming up to me and talking to me first, basically just throwing themselves at me. This all comes down to what's called animal magnetism, and specifically there are 5 tricks I found that give me this kind of magnetism, and these are short-term tricks. You can do them immediately and girls start approaching you. And I show you these 5 tricks in my short handbook. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Making Women Approach You. This handbook is free today. I'm giving it to you as a free gift for getting this far into the video. So if you want to learn the 5 easy secrets to making hot young girls approach you for sex, click the link in the description below right now. When you click that link, you'll be taken to my website. Then you just have to enter your name and email, and I'll email you this free book right away. Read it when you get a chance. Start using these 5 tricks and start getting approached by women now. People are raving about this handbook, by the way. It's been very well received. So pause the video now, click the link, enter your email, and the report will be sent to you immediately. Then come back and continue the video. Now, why do I want your email? Is this a scam? Am I going to sell your email address to gypsies? No. The reason I want your email is so that I can continue to send you cool free shit. Specifically, you're going to be signed up to my daily email newsletter where I put out new free content every day on dating advice, girls, game, masculinity, the occult, as well as raw, uncensored content that's too controversial or too sexually explicit to put here on YouTube. People love the newsletter. This is where I post all my best free content. It's not here on YouTube. It's in my free email newsletter, but you got to be signed up to get it. So make sure you do that. And again, when you sign up for the newsletter using the link below, you'll also get this free gift, the ultimate guide to making beautiful girls approach you no matter your looks, age, or money. And all this is all motherfucking free. There is no catch. There is no cost. The email newsletter is free for life. The Women Approach You handbook, free. And if you don't like the emails, you can unsubscribe anytime and keep the book, obviously. So once again, pause this video now, click the link below, and put in your email to download your free book now while I'm still giving it away for free. All right, now back to the video. So we've been talking about how to sleep with 100 plus girls, how to be sexually magnetic to women using Buddhist sorcery, Buddhist black magic. I've given you the philosophy of this. What we're going to get into now is how to actually apply all of this in practice and how to actually use these principles of Sith Lord lightning vehicle Buddhism to get laid, get a hot girl in your bed, get a girlfriend who looks incredible, naked, get huff buddies, friends with benefits, a harem. That's what we're going to get into now. However, before we can get to using these more advanced techniques and concepts, we really need to go back and start at the very, very beginning here, because when it comes to getting girls, when it comes to attracting women, we always need to start from this one core premise, this one fundamental assumption, and that is that you are enough. As a man, you are enough to attract the women you want. You don't need to change anything about yourself. You don't need to improve in any way. You don't need better game, more money, better looks. You already have everything you need to be attractive to any woman on this earth simply because you're a man and she's a woman, okay? And we have to start with that. If we don't start there, if we don't acknowledge that core premise, then everything else is going to be built on a rotten foundation. This was the problem with almost all pickup artist methods. It was all based on an unstated premise that you're not enough, that you're a loser, that you're inferior in some way, and then you have to compensate for that to trick the girl into wanting you. Around here on this channel, we begin with the opposite premise, the premise that you are enough, you're already enough just as you are right now. Why? Again, simply because you're a man and she's a woman, and therefore something can always happen. And the best analogy for this, the best way to understand it is this. Imagine you were in a plane crash and you wind up stranded on a desert island. You and a beautiful girl, like a perfect 10, are the only 2 survivors. And imagine this girl is literally the most beautiful woman in the world, whoever that is to you, like maybe Sydney Sweeney or someone like that, but someone who is genuinely out of your league. Now, the essence of what you are enough means is, I don't care how ugly you are or how bald or fat or short or anything else. I don't care if you have a fucking hunchback. If you and that perfect 10 were stranded on that island together for weeks and months, she would inevitably wind up becoming attracted to you. And you would inevitably wind up having sex together and probably even falling in love. It's inevitable. It actually cannot be avoided. And the reason why is that you're a man and she's a woman. So there's always some innate level of attraction there, because women are always going to be potentially attracted to you just because you have that masculine energy. You have testosterone and a dick. And so it really doesn't matter about your looks or money or anything else. So long as you are a man, you are enough to be attractive to any woman on this earth, assuming you actually spend enough time with her face to face. Now, if you don't spend any time with her face to face, if you're texting her over an internet website, then you're not going to be attractive to her because you can't transmit that masculine energy through the phone. But if you approach a woman in public and if you spend enough time together, you are always going to become attractive to her inevitably the more time you spend. So long as as you actually trust that this process is working for you in the background. Now, I have a whole other video about that where I talk about this in much more depth. You can watch that later. But the important thing to remember, the thing we always need to start with and make the foundation of everything else we do, is this idea that you are enough. You know, if you're a man, if you have that innate core of maleness or masculine energy, then you already have everything you need to be attractive to any woman you want, if you can approach her and actually spend time with her, and assuming you don't do anything weird or needy or like super try hard or whatever. Now, this naturally brings up the next question, which is, if you are enough, if you're already attractive to women as you are, just because you're a man, why aren't you getting laid right now? You know, why are you sitting here watching this instead of getting your dick sucked by a 10? And the answer, the real answer, if you really want to distill it down and simplify it, is that you're not approaching 10s. You're probably not actually approaching any girls at all. Or if you are approaching some girls, you're not approaching nearly enough girls to actually get any kind of consistent success, to get the momentum you need, to get the practice you need, to get the learning, the skill acquisition, or even just the raw volume, the numbers you need to actually get success and sex. You know, pickup is a numbers game, but it's also a momentum game, and it's also a game of skill. And those three things, probability, momentum, and skill, they all accelerate the more women you approach, and they all decelerate and actually get worse the less women you're approaching. So again, this is a very, very simplified overview of success with women here, but at the end of the day, it really does just come down to approaching a lot of girls. You know, Jeff Allen, he used to say, any problem a guy could possibly have in pickup, the answer is always add more girls. In other words, approach more women, talk to more girls, have more abundance, get more momentum, get more sex, have more girlfriends, more friends with benefits. As they say in the US Army, if brute force isn't working, you're probably not using enough of it. So, you know, we can overcomplicate this all we want, but at the end of the day, a guy who has 3 out of 10 game but approaches 20 hot girls a night is always going to do better than a guy with 10 out of 10 game who only approaches 3 girls a night. Okay, so if your success with women is really just a function of how many girls you approach, which again, I know I'm oversimplifying it, but please just bear with me on this for now. If your success is really just down to how many girls you approach on a regular basis, the next question then becomes, well, why aren't you approaching girls on a regular basis? Why aren't you approaching enough girls or even any girls? And the reason why, the real reason why, is not what you think it is. It's not fear. It's not that you're afraid to approach. It's not that you have approach anxiety. It's not even that you're too lazy to approach. The real, deeper, underlying reason why you do not approach women is not any of these things. What it actually is apathy. Apathy, lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern. The reason you don't approach is because you don't care. You don't care enough about getting sex to motivate you to take action. In other words, you just don't want it badly enough. That's actually the root of why you don't approach enough or at all. And by extension, it's also the root cause of why you don't have the success with women that you want. Because if you approached more, you'd be in a state of momentum with it. And you'd also learn faster. You'd sort out what's wrong and what's right through trial and error. And even just on a pure numbers game level, you'd also simply be stacking the odds in your favor so much that it becomes impossible to fail. So your problem is not that you're unattractive, because again, remember, you are enough. And if you need to be convinced of that, you can watch my other videos on that topic. Your problem is not even that you have approach anxiety. That's actually downstream of this deeper, more original problem. Your real problem, your deeper problem, is that you have approach apathy. You don't want sex with girls badly enough, at least in that moment, to motivate you to approach them. And so when you're out in an environment where you see a woman you could approach, but you don't do it, if you search your heart in that moment, you'll recognize that what I'm saying is true. You probably don't actually feel fear in that moment. You know, there might be a surface level emotion of anxiety and jitteriness or, nervousness about approaching, but underneath that fear, and actually much more fundamental than it, is actually apathy. It's that you just don't actually really care enough about getting that particular girl to motivate yourself to approach her in that scenario. And so your problem is not actually low self-esteem or fear or anxiety or trauma or any of these other things. Your real problem is actually apathy, indifference. And as I said before, if you get into spirituality, if you follow this popular advice to abolish your ego, eliminate your desires and your attachment, master your passions, this is actually going to make this problem worse, not better. Because when you get rid of ego, when you get rid of desire, apathy is going to increase, not decrease. And, maybe you don't believe me on this, but try it for yourself. Walk this path like I did for 10 plus years. You will inevitably find what I'm saying here to be true. As wisdom increases, so does apathy and indifference. And that's not a good thing. That's the whole premise of this. Wisdom, indifference, and non-attachment are not good. Not if you're a man, not if you're still young, and not if you're not established in the world yet. Now, another thing that makes apathy worse, and this is very paradoxical, is actually success. What you're going to find is the more success with women you have, the more girls you sleep with, the less you're going to care about it, and the more difficult it will be to motivate yourself to continue to take the right action. And this is why, even without talking about Buddhism or spirituality, even if you're just a pure pleasure-seeking pickup artist, pickup is a very, very unstable thing. Because, you would think that as you develop skill and momentum and you get better at talking to girls, your results should just kind of go up and up and up in a straight line. It doesn't work like that. And the reason why, it's not anything to do with the girls, it's actually to do with what's going on inside your own head. When you get laid, when you get hot girlfriends and sex buddies, it often becomes tremendously difficult to motivate yourself to go out and approach new girls. Because why the fuck would you? Why would you want to go out alone to some dirty bar and spend the night getting rejected by 6s and 7s when you have an 8 at home who's dying to fuck you? Now, the logical answer to this, the real answer, is that you need to spend your nights talking to 6s and 7s and staying in a state of momentum with game and with approaching, because that's ultimately how you're going to get the 9 or the 10. But when you've already got an 8 at home, or even a couple of 8s, and that's kind of a tricky thing to motivate yourself for. So the point I'm really making here is it doesn't matter if you're a complete virgin or if you've already slept with 100 girls or more. No matter where you are in that whole spectrum, if you're not getting the girls you want, I guarantee you your actual problem, the root problem, is actually apathy. It's approach apathy, not approach anxiety. And I've basically spent the past 3 years struggling with this problem because, as I said, the better your sex life and your dating life, the worse this problem actually becomes, paradoxically. I also quit drinking during that time, and that made it really hard to motivate myself to approach in a way I hadn't experienced before. And I figured out, kind of counterintuitively, it wasn't because the drinking gave me more courage or made me more at ease talking to women, because I quickly found that within a couple months I actually was completely at ease talking to girls sober. It wasn't really a problem. But that wasn't actually the edge that drinking was giving me. The edge was, and I never realized this until I quit, the real benefit of drinking alcohol while approaching girls is what it gives you is desire, lust. You actually want to have sex with some girl who objectively, if you were sober in the clear light of day, you would realize is not actually that hot. And so when I removed drinking from the equation, I'd go out to nightclubs where I used to absolutely slay, like pull girls every single night I went out there, but I'd be looking around and there'd be maybe like 2 or 3 girls who I'd actually even consider it a win to have sex with. And maybe all 3 are with boyfriends, or I just can't approach them for whatever reason. Well, what motivation is there to approach and get momentum with these other girls who I don't even particularly want to sleep with? There is none. And so what I realized was, alcohol was putting me in a state of delusion. It was making me attracted to girls who I normally wouldn't have even wanted that badly without it. And that delusion was actually fueling my success, because I'd approach those girls and get momentum that way. And then that would eventually lead to me approaching and pulling the actual hot girls who are objectively beautiful. But remove alcohol from that equation, remove delusion and vice and weakness and stupidity, and you actually remove the very X factor that was making the system work. And so what I realized as a result of all this was that it's really all about desire. Can you generate real desire in yourself, the burning desire to win, the burning desire for... That's really what your success with women will all depend on. And I no longer use alcohol to do that. But what I found instead, an even better way to do it, is Tibetan Buddhism. Precisely the topic of what we're talking about today. Vajrayana, Occult Buddhism, Diamond Vehicle Buddhist magic. So what I've discovered is, after many, many years of struggling against this problem and testing many, many different solutions to it, Thunderbolt Vehicle Buddhism provides a set of tools that actually allows you to destroy apathy and get into states of desire, passion, and enthusiasm at will. And why is that so important? Because this is what allows you to actually motivate yourself to take action. And it's all about action, taking massive action, getting into a state of momentum from taking action. That's all success actually really is. Any field, girls, money, whatever it is, it's all about momentum. You do that, you can get whatever you want on earth. Girls, money, sex, success, it all comes from taking action. And more precisely, it comes from being in a state of passionate momentum as a result of taking action. That is what Diamond Vehicle Buddhism gives you. That is what makes it utterly alien and radically unique and different from any other spiritual path out there. The reason for that is very interesting. In the original form of Buddhism, taught by the Buddha himself, the idea was to escape. It was to get moksha, liberation, transcend the material body, transcend the cycles of death and rebirth, escape the prison that is material reality, and ascend to nirvana so that you can be in bliss and tranquility forever. That was the idea of Hinayana Buddhism, what's called the lesser vehicle. But Buddhism didn't stick with that idea. It continued to evolve after the Buddha was gone. And the next evolution they arrived at was the idea of the Bodhisattva. And the Bodhisattva is someone who has attained enlightenment and who can ascend to nirvana and escape the wheel of reincarnation if he wants to, but he chooses to stay here on earth so that he can help other people to attain enlightenment themselves. He sort of sacrifices his own bliss and happiness for the greater good. It's actually a little bit like the idea of Christ. And this was the central premise of what came to be called Mahayana Buddhism, which means the greater vehicle of Buddhism. And it's distinct from Hinayana, the lesser vehicle, because in a way of looking at it, the lesser vehicle is a little bit selfish. It's premised on this idea that, well, I've got my enlightenment, I found the way to paradise, so I'm out of here. Screw you fuckers, I'm going home. You guys can stay here and figure it out for yourselves. Now, in contrast to this, the Bodhisattva acts from compassion. He willingly endures the nightmare and the horrible pain and suffering and misery that is life in the material world, despite being free to leave any time he chooses to, purely so that he can help other people to escape samsara and enjoy the treasures of paradise themselves. Delights which he himself will never get to taste until everyone else has attained enlightenment and been evacuated from hell, even down to the animals, even down to every last blade of grass, as they say. The vow of the Bodhisattva. Now, the final evolution of Buddhism, and what is sometimes seen as its apex, its pinnacle of sophistication and potency, is the third vehicle, the Thunderbolt vehicle, or the Diamond vehicle. And the idea of the Diamond vehicle, which builds on top of everything we just said, is that if you become enlightened, if you become a fully enlightened Buddha, or if you decide to take the path of the Bodhisattva, to stay here in the nightmare of samsara, the material world, so that you can help other sentient beings to reach enlightenment. Well, now the primary problem or the primary issue is, if I can leave and go to nirvana anytime I like, how do I motivate myself to actually stay here and continue to deal with all this bullshit, despite the fact that it is frequently so unsatisfying, tedious, and unpleasant? And so, while the original form of Buddhism was about escaping the material world, through following this inexorable logic all the way through to its end, by the time we reach the Middle Ages in India and Tibet, they've actually reached a point at which they're now looking at the problem in reverse. Instead of emphasizing how horrible life is and how unsatisfying material pleasures are, by the time we reach Tantric Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, they have recognized that what you actually need in a spiritual vehicle is precisely the opposite. You need to find a reason for living. You need to find ways of living passionately and with exuberance and potency, which make it worthwhile to even want to stay here on earth at all. Because if you don't, then any being who becomes enlightened fucks off. They go to heaven or nirvana. They leave this place, and then there's no one here to continue the work of enlightening everyone else who are still stuck. And so now, Vajrayana Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism, a big part of it is about sex. It's about physical pleasure, enjoying and indulging the pleasures of the physical body. Now, not all Tantra is like this, but a lot of it is. It's actually hedonistic, debauched, depraved. It's about rejecting the spirit, embracing the body, embracing the pleasures and the lusts and the passions of the flesh. For example, there is a famous Tibetan Bhutanese monk, the so-called mad monk or crazy saint, Drukpa Kunli. He was a fully enlightened Dharma lord who nevertheless lived his life as a roving scoundrel, seducing and deflowering thousands of girls and women. Now, in the Abrahamic religions, no holy man would ever behave in this way. But within the context of the internal logic of Tibetan Buddhism, Kunli's womanizing was not only accepted, but he's actually seen as a heroic and noble figure, kind of a folk hero, and even as a saint. And to understand why, you have to realize this fundamental distinction. In Hinayana Buddhism, Buddhism classic, the idea was sex with girls? No, bad Drukpa Kunli. These things only keep you chained to the material world and tethered to the illusion of samsara. You must transcend these selfish desires if you want to taste the sweet nectar of nirvana. But in Vajrayana Buddhism, the whole premise, Kunli's answer to that would be, well, thank you for your advice, but you see, the issue is I've already transcended samsara. I'm already a fully enlightened Buddha right now, as are you, by the way. And so now, really what I need is actually something enjoyable that I like doing here on earth and which actually gives me a reason to even want to stay here and put up with you fools at all. It's more, Tantric Buddhism actually takes quite a similar view to St. Paul in the Bible when he said that Everything is pure to those whose hearts are pure. Sex, debauchery, depravity, and so on. These things can only defile you if you are already defiled in your heart. So anyway, to bring this back to the actual practical reality here, the question is again, if you want girls, how do you make yourself approach them? How do you overcome apathy? How do you make yourself take action and approach women, despite the fact that in truth, deep down, you don't actually want it that badly? How do you generate desire in yourself, that burning, red-hot desire to win and get that actually propels you like internal combustion to take the right action? So that is what we're going to discuss now, and that is what Buddhist sorcery, Buddhist black magic is fundamentally concerned with. Conventional Buddhism is about eliminating your desire. Buddhist black magic, or what I call red magic, is the opposite. It's about generating desire on purpose. It's not about mastering your passions, it's about inflaming them. Because when you are inflamed by that burning desire, that's what actually gives you the energy and the juice you need to take action and win. And winning is what makes life in samsara actually worth living. Without winning, without achievement, without some form of success or pleasure, why even continue to exist on earth at all? Why not just kill yourself? Classical Buddhism cannot give you a good answer to that question. Tibetan Buddhism does. So, in Tibetan Buddhism, in Tantric Buddhism, the big idea that we're going to be focusing on today is the idea of transmuting negative emotions into energy. So in Buddhism, they talk about what they call the 5 kleshas, or the 5 afflictions. These are the 5 defiling mental emotional states that prevent us from attaining enlightenment and keep us chained to the hell that is samsara, material existence, the wheel of death and rebirth. You can think of the 5 kleshas as being a little bit like the Buddhist version of the 7 deadly sins. They are pride, lust, envy or jealousy, hatred, and delusion. These 5 mental states are widely seen in all cultures and at all times as being undesirable and as being the root of all human evil. What I am going to suggest to you is that on the contrary, these 5 poisons are actually priceless jewels. Because it is these 5 emotions, and only these 5 emotions, that actually give you the energy and the fuel you need to take action and get what you want. Conventional Buddhism and religion tells you to purge yourself of these 5 instincts. Tantric Buddhism, lightning vehicle Buddhism, the way of the Sith Lord, is about doing the exact opposite. It's actually about increasing and even empowering the intensity of these dark emotional forces. Because when you increase the voltage of these negative emotions, you can transmute them into energy and ride that lightning all the way to achievement, occult power, and ultimately even to enlightenment itself. They say that the diamond vehicle is actually paradoxically the fastest way to reach enlightenment if you follow it through to the end. You know, again, the poison is the cure. All right, so we've been talking about a lot of high concept philosophical ideas here, but I want to bring this right down to earth now by giving you a very practical, concrete example of exactly what I mean by this. And also why what I'm saying here and what I'm going to give you in this video is really radically different than anything you've ever seen before or from any other pickup artist or approach women type of method you've ever seen. So back in the day, the old school pickup artists who I learned everything from, you know, guys like Mystery, Owen Cook, Julian Blanc, they taught this idea they called selective blind spots. You could even call it selective amnesia. And the idea was, let's say you go to a bar and you approach 10 girls. And let's say you have a really bad night. You know, let's say almost every girl you approach viciously rejects you, you know, tells you to fuck off, ignores you, they even call you ugly. But let's say of those 10 girls you approached, there was one girl who was actually kind of nice to you. You know, she was actually friendly, she was pretty cool, and maybe you didn't even get her number or anything, but you had a nice enough conversation with her and it actually went well. Well, what the pickup artist said was, in that situation, what you should do the next day after you get home and you're thinking about what happened the previous night is, they said you should basically cultivate selective amnesia about all those rejections. Like all those girls who rejected you or were mean to you, erase those memories from your mind, delete them, never think about them again, and focus entirely on the one interaction you had that actually went well. Now, this is good advice. You know, this is very, very good advice, especially for a guy who's new, because there is a principle in, you know, classic self-help that whatever you focus on grows. If the girls hated you and you focus on that negative and you dwell on it, that will damage your confidence. And so when you approach girls again, you'll do even worse this time because you're expecting it to go badly now. And so it's like a downward spiral. But on the other hand, if you just focus on the positive, that one interaction that went well, that will keep your enthusiasm up. You'll have that kind of delusional self-confidence and you'll keep taking action. And again, I agree with that. I think that's all very good advice, particularly for a guy who's new and who might be like insecure, nervous, shy. And I personally followed that advice for years and I did very, very well. However, despite all of that, I no longer follow this principle of focusing on the positive and cultivating selective amnesia in this way. What I do now, after many, many years in the game, what I have developed and what I found to be ultimately much more powerful and more energizing is a technique which is essentially the exact opposite of this. I call it keeping the hate alive. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Let's say I go out and I approach 10 girls. If 9 of those 10 girls liked me, but just 1 out of the 10 didn't like me, and let's say she rejected me, she kind of snubbed me, she was mean to me or rude to me in some way, and it kind of irritated me, like it got under my skin. The next day, I focus entirely on that one girl who rejected me. I want to keep that rejection in the forefront of my mind. And I make a deliberate effort to burn it into my memory because I don't want to forget it. I want to keep that wound fresh. I want to keep the wound open. Because when I focus on that rejection, the girl who was a bitch to me, who was rude to me, who ignored me when I tried to talk to her, whatever it was, it makes me angry. It makes me frustrated. And I actually want to increase those negative emotions that I'm feeling. I want the anger they give me. I want the hate, the frustration, and I want to keep that hate alive. Why? Because what I have found is that when I am fueled by that specific kind of anger and that specific kind of frustration, by spite, by peak, when I go out again the next night, I will go on a fucking rampage. I will take massive action. I will approach every girl there who I find hot, and there will be no more apathy. There will be no more approach anxiety, because now I have something to prove. You understand? Now I have a chip on my shoulder, which I did not have the previous night. Now I'm not just motivated by, oh yeah, it'd be nice to meet a girl and have sex. That'd be kind of cool. No. Now, along with that normal motivation, there's also this red hot coal I'm holding on to, which is that bitch who rejected me last night. Fuck that shit. I'm going to prove her wrong. I'm going to go out again tonight, and I'm not going to fuck around this time. And tonight, I'm going to take massive action. I'm going to pull a girl who's 10 times hotter than her out of pure spite. And that is when I actually get laid. That's when I actually get success. And so that is just a very good example of the underlying principle of everything I'm going to be saying here. This is actually different to and goes completely against everything you've probably been told by conventional pickup or dating coaches. They tell you cultivate selective blind spots, focus on the positive. If you get rejected, if it goes badly, delete that memory, move on. Focus only on the interactions that went well. What I'm saying here is the opposite. What I'm saying is focus on the negative. When you get rejected, when you get snubbed, when a girl fucks you over, focus on that and actually amplify the hate, amplify the rage, amplify the negative emotions that produces, because then you can ride those emotions to take massive action the following night. It's like a surfer riding a wave. If there are no negative emotions, there is no wave to ride. This is something that has taken me many, many years to learn. You can actually eliminate negative emotions entirely. It's completely possible. You can remove your ego in such a way that when you get rejected, it actually doesn't feel bad at all. The downside of that is that you will have little or no motivation, no energy, no fuel to make yourself take action. On the flip side though, having recognized this, we can actually go in the opposite direction. We can deliberately provoke and inflame negative emotions in order to generate energy. We can then ride that lightning all the way to getting whatever it is we want. Sex with hot women, money, achievement, whatever it is you're trying to motivate yourself to take action towards. So that's the basis of this principle. And understand something here right away. This doesn't feel good, okay? It doesn't feel pleasant. It's not a nice sensation when you do this. Being rejected feels bad, obviously. And being angry or frustrated or resentful about that rejection, rather than just, moving on, letting go, it actually feels even worse. But that's the entire point. I want to feel bad. I want to feel the negative emotion and that frustration, because I can then ride that energy. I can use that passion and that electricity to propel me to take massive action the next night. And I cannot do that if I'm actually feeling completely happy and content, or at least I'm going to take much, much less action in my experience. And when I look back on it, 90% of my polls, 90% of the girls I fucked from cold approach, 90% of the girlfriends and buddies, I got that success precisely because I was rejected, once or maybe many times the previous night or maybe the previous week. Do you understand? So the rejection and the negative emotion that comes from that rejection is actually what gets you the success. You can't have the sex without the pain of rejection beforehand, because it's only the pain of that rejection that's going to give you a chip on your shoulder and motivate you to approach and actually take it seriously this time, because now you have something to prove. So this is all about tapping into your dark side, how to tap into and harness those dark emotions, that shadow, your ego, because these are what actually give you energy, not rainbows and sunshine. As I said, Buddhism identifies 5 root negative emotions or mental afflictions, what they call kleshas. They are delusion, envy or jealousy, pride, wrath, and lust. Now, the first of these, delusion or ignorance, we're not going to be covering because it's not actually an emotion. It's kind of distinct from these other 4. Delusion, by which they mean the delusion of your ego, this is more like the medium through which the other four impulses arise. So delusion, egotism, the belief that you are this separate being, that you're not one with the universe, so to speak, that delusion is sort of like the glue that holds the rest of these negative impulses together. The four remaining kleshas, envy, pride, wrath, and lust, these are seen as the four elements, the four fundamental building blocks of all human suffering. For this very same reason, however, they are also the root of all human motivation. In other words, if you want motivation, if you want energy to take action, if you want potency, vitality, passion, will, it is going to have to come from one or more of these four elements, because only negative emotions motivate massive action. Positive emotions will not do it for you. So what we're going to be doing here, what I'm going to show you how to do, is how to deliberately turn up the dial on each of these four elements of the dark side: envy, jealousy, pride, wrath, and lust. And this is the essence of Tantric Buddhist sorcery. In Vajrayana, they do not try to eliminate these negative emotions. Instead, they actually provoke them deliberately so they can transmute them into energy. In other words, it is very like that old Sith Lord idea from Star Wars, use your hate, use your anger.
I can feel your anger. It gives you focus, makes you stronger.
Now, before we get started, it's very important for safety reasons to understand one key distinction here, which is that we do not want these emotions for their own sake. We want to provoke them so that we can transmute them. These four emotions are like fire. They are very, very dangerous. They're highly destabilizing. They're the source of every downfall. Everyone who ever went to prison, everyone who ever went mad or had a nervous breakdown.
Anakin, Chancellor Palpatine is evil! From my point of view, the Jedi are evil!
So you need to know how to transmute these emotions once they arise. To transmute something means to change its form. If you can't transmute these four emotions, you're going to blow a fuse, potentially even lose your mind. And this does indeed appear to have been what happened to at least a few of the masters of Vajrayana Buddhism. They went mad with power and became evil sorcerers, precipitating their downfall after a reign of terror. So this path is not without risk. In actual fact, it is extraordinarily dangerous and it is fraught with terrible hazards. Lightning vehicle Buddhism has been compared to a very fast car, like a Ferrari with flames painted on it. It gets you where you want to go faster than any other vehicle, but with that very speed and power comes a tremendously higher risk of danger and injury than you would have while driving a slower, safer car. So with that in mind, a few important warnings before we proceed. First off, in order to play with these dark forces, you have got to be in immaculate physical health. You should be lifting heavy weights 3 to 5 times a week. You should be an athletic guy who's in excellent shape, strong, fit, extremely robust physically. If you are not, then what I'm going to be showing you here is going to wind up with you going to a mental asylum. Get your physical health handled before you start playing with the dark side. Being strong and healthy will also increase your testosterone, which will in itself make these practices more effective anyway. Second, drugs and alcohol. In moderation, you should be fine. But if you drink every day, if you drink heavily, or if you use drugs regularly, this stuff we're going to be getting into is a massive, massive hazard. Drugs and alcohol dissolve your spiritual boundaries, your borders. They make you a magnet for foreign entities, parasites, aka demons, unclean spirits.
Demons? Demons aren't real. They're parables, metaphors.
Then what the fuck is that?
What we're going to be getting into here, if you do it in combination with heavy drug or alcohol use, is basically a recipe for how to get demonically possessed and wind up in a mental asylum. So I would strongly recommend you cut down or completely cut off using all foreign substances before playing with black magic of this kind. You have been warned. Now in this connection, I've also found that quitting alcohol actually makes this kind of magic much more potent, because alcohol and drugs like weed, they numb you, they dull your edge. But the entire point of this is that we do not want to be numb. We actually want those negative emotions. We want that edge. And so anything like alcohol or weed, which dulls those emotions and kind of makes you feel good, is inherently going to make this method much less powerful and less effective. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. The first element of Buddhist black magic, the first and most vital fuel source of the dark side, the first of these 4 priceless jewels, is envy. Envy and jealousy. And envy is the most powerful and the most universal human motivation there is. As Warren Buffett said, it's not greed that makes the world go round, but envy. To envy is to want what someone else has. Now, in motivating yourself to approach women, envy is absolutely priceless. It's also the most easily accessible of these 5 dark energy sources. In other words, it's the one that anyone can start with and can start working with right away. And this is a bit counterintuitive, because given that our goal here is to approach women in order to get sex, you might think that the best motivation to use and the best emotion to start with would be lust. But that is wrong. In actual fact, pure lust, real lust, organic lust is actually very expensive. To actually be able to look at a woman in real life and to feel real, genuine lust for her, like to actually get hard right then and there, this virtually never happens, assuming it's a stranger. And it's actually a great accomplishment if it does. The human male almost never feels raw lust for a woman who's a complete stranger. By pure lust, I mean a lust that's not based on thinking. It's not mixed up with thoughts or fantasies or masturbatory stimulation. Pure lust, what we might call innocent lust, is, you see the girl, there are no thoughts, there are no fantasies. You're not off somewhere else in your head. You're right here and now in the present moment, but you see her, your body responds, your dick gets hard. That's real lust. That's the kind of lust that an animal in mating season might feel. But with human beings, it's actually very rare that we experience this kind of lust, at least not when we're out in public surrounded by people. You might feel it for your girlfriend when you're at home alone together, but it's actually very difficult to generate this kind of lust for a woman who's a complete stranger to you in a public setting like a bar or nightclub or on the street. And so, in terms of motivating ourselves to take action and approach, we can't actually use raw lust most of the time. Not in the beginning anyway. Now, lust will come into play in a big way later in the game, particularly when you're already pretty good at cold approach, when you're already getting some success. But if you're just starting out, if you haven't approached a girl in a couple weeks or ever, then trying to start off by motivating yourself with lust is actually not going to work very well. It's not the right fuel you need to put in your engine at this point in the journey. The right fuel to motivate yourself to approach girls, especially if you haven't done it in a while, is not lust, but envy. Envy is a very, very powerful and combustible fuel for motivating action. In Tibetan Buddhism, they say that envy jealousy is uniquely transmuted into what they call the wisdom of all-accomplishing activity. This means action that almost does itself. When you're fueled by envy, the desire to have something that another person has, or when you're fueled by jealousy, the fear or the paranoia of losing what you already possess, this negative emotion is unique among all other emotions as being very, very easy to transmute into achievement, taking action, getting things done. And this is why this is the emotion we actually want to start with. This is the passion that you actually want to nurture most of all on the path of the dark side, envy, jealousy. And again, this is very counterintuitive because envy and jealousy is one of those things we're all told that it's never good to feel. Everyone will tell you that envy is bad, jealousy is bad, nothing good ever comes from having these emotions, and that is absolute bullshit. Envy, jealousy is the ultimate fuel of achievement and power. It is priceless. It's a treasure, a glistening jewel. And through envy, through harnessing the power and the frustration of envy, you can access a bottomless well of motivation and energy. It's an endlessly replenishable resource. So, when you see a guy with a girl and they're a couple and you want that girl, use that as fuel. Use it as energy to take action, to make yourself approach, to get a girl like that for yourself. And the question to always ask here is, why not me? Why not you? Why shouldn't you have a girl like that? Why shouldn't you have a girl with a great body, in shape, tan, toned? Why not you? There's no reason at all except a stupid one that some other guy should get to enjoy a girl like that and you shouldn't. If you want it, you can go out and get it. And envy, it is the queen of the passions. It is the most powerful and electrifying and beautiful and radiant negative emotion there is for motivating you to go out and take the action you need to take in order to get what you want. All right. The second big source of fuel and energy for approaching women is pride, egotism. It's a feeling that you are better than other people, that you are distinct from them and superior to them. And it's also the pain, the cognitive dissonance you experience when that feeling of pride and distinction is threatened. And again, the religions will tell you that pride is a bad thing, that pride will destroy you, pride goeth before the fall, and it will, but not falling is overrated. And pride, egotism, these are essential X factors in motivating yourself to take action. You get rid of your pride, you get rid of ego, you are basically going to become a vegetable. No one achieves shit without one hell of a big ego to make it happen. Every saint whose name you know, and not the ones you don't know, but the ones you do know, St. Paul, St. Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, they had huge fucking egos and a tremendous amount of pride in their work. And that is not a bad thing. Pride alone motivates a man to exceptional achievements and accomplishments. If you get rid of pride, if you get rid of ego, you may as well go live in a nursing home and wait to die, because there is nothing else here to do on this earth without pride or ego to motivate it. I'll tell you that for free. Now, in the context of approaching women, particularly when it comes to getting over approach anxiety or approach apathy, pride and its counterpart, shame, plays an absolutely integral role in this drama. And where this comes into play specifically is with something called cognitive dissonance, and how this relates to your feelings of pride, your feelings of self-respect as a man, a basic degree of feeling like you're a competent man who can do what he says he's going to do. So cognitive dissonance refers to the pain people experience from holding two conflicting beliefs at the same time. So a simple example of this is when you decide that you're going to go out and take action, but you don't do it. Let's say you go to a bar or club and you tell yourself, I'm going to go and approach 10 girls tonight. But instead, what happens is you wander around, you don't approach anyone, you make up excuses for why you can't approach, and then you go home alone. Now, the next morning, when you wake up and when you recall what happened the previous night, you are going to feel bad. You're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel ashamed, because you're going to look back and you're going to think of all those cute girls you saw last night who you could have approached but didn't, and it's going to make you feel pain. If you're any kind of a man at all, you're going to feel a sense of shame about your failure to take action the night before. So, this is not really relevant for you if you're the part of my audience that doesn't take action and who have never approached a girl before. In that case, you probably don't know what I'm talking about here, but if you do take action, or if you at least try to, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. There is a feeling of great pain, of shame, guilt, frustration when you see a girl or a couple girls who are very, very attractive and you should approach them, but you don't. And what I'm telling you is that pain, that very shame, that frustration and guilt is actually gold, because you can harness that hot, burning, kind of irritating energy that it gives you to take action the following day. And this comes from pride. It comes specifically from having your pride challenged or wounded. Every man has a basic kernel of belief that they're as good as other men, or in some cases that they're better, that they're more morally virtuous, or they're braver, or they're smarter. But what happens then when you go out and you try to approach but you can't, is that image you have of yourself as being better than other men is completely eviscerated. Most guys are a legend in their own mind. Most guys have a lot of pride, a lot of self-love secretly. But when you go out and you can't even get yourself to approach a girl, that's painful, because what that does is it shoves it in your face that this image you have of yourself in your own head as this badass is complete bullshit. And this is going to happen to you over and over again if you actually go out. You're not going to be able to ignore it. You're not going to be able to pretend and fantasize anymore that you're this badass who gets women, because it's going to happen continually so many times that it's impossible to rationalize or make excuses anymore. You don't take action when you should. You're a coward, you're a pussy, you're a bitch. And what does that do? That hurts your pride. It is extremely agitating. It's very, very irritating. It gives you this very unpleasant feeling the next day. Shame, guilt, whatever you want to call it. It's actually like a sensation of like heat, fire, burning. It's like having indigestion or something. It's very, very uncomfortable. And when you're experiencing that guilt and that shame from cognitive dissonance, you would do anything to get out of that feeling of discomfort and feel good about yourself again. And that is where the solution of transmutation through action comes into play. And again, this is where all my success with women has come from. It's all in this. I go out, I try to approach, I can't approach, and the next day I'm very angry about that. I'm pissed off at myself, but I don't numb myself to that anger. I don't block it out. I don't try to suppress it. I don't drink alcohol. I don't take drugs. I don't masturbate. I don't do anything that's going to take the edge off that anger and that shame I feel for not approaching, because what I want to do is I actually want to use that anger. I want to use that shame. I want to channel it into making myself take massive action and approaching girls the next day. And then I do it properly. And that is how I actually get laid. For 10 years, this has been my system for getting girls, and it's flawless. It's undefeated. I usually go out 2 nights a week, Friday and Saturday. It's very rare that I get any results at all on Friday. Actually, it very often happens, even after 10 years, that I can't get myself to approach anyone on that Friday night. But what then happens is Saturday morning when I wake up, I remember that I was too much of a bitch to approach anyone the previous night, and that makes me angry. It makes me frustrated. And it's precisely that frustration, that internal fire, that gives me the motivation to go out again on the Saturday night and approach like a fucking demon. And ultimately, that's when I meet a hot girl, and that's when I get laid. Okay, the third priceless jewel of the dark side is wrath, or anger, resentment, hatred, spite, peak. And this is principally the anger and resentment you feel when a girl rejects you. It's the feeling of rage or even hatred that flows through you like a current of electricity when a woman snubs you or disrespects you in some way. This can come out as a desire for revenge, for vindication, to get even, to show people they were wrong, to make them regret rejecting you. It's what they call having a chip on your shoulder. And this brings with it a tremendous amount of energy, a tremendous amount of heat, force, And again, people will tell you anger is bad, hate is bad, it's unhealthy, it's toxic. As the Buddha said, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal and expecting it to hurt someone else. Ultimately, you're the only one who gets burned. And that may all be true, but in terms of motivating action, in terms of fueling achievement, anger, resentment, wrath, hatred, spite, these are priceless jewels. They are treasures. Anger or spite is one of the absolute best, most powerful, most potent, and most combustible energy sources that a human being can run on, bar none. Men will do things and they will undergo incredible hardships and deprivations purely out of spite, which they would never be able to endure for love, for money, or even for all the sex and pleasure in the world. I would be willing to bet any amount of money that spite has prevented more men from killing themselves than kindness, love, and generosity combined. Because as a man, you can always fall back on spite. You can always fall back on anger. The way the male biology is wired. Within every man, there's an invincible nucleus of fuck you. Oh, there's nothing worth living for? Well, you know what? Fuck you. I'm doing it anyway. I'm going to fight and I'm going to scrap till the bitter fucking end, even if I don't have the slightest chance of winning this fight, just to piss you off. That's the male nature, and that's the genius of the male nature. But the religions and the spiritual practices try to suppress this genius. They tell you it's wrong, it's bad. No, these emotions, anger, spite, wrath, resentment, they are there to serve you. They're there to be used as fuel. Anger is also the most powerful painkiller in the world, bar none. Ego, spite, resentment. This is actually what gives you the energy and the endurance to get up again after being knocked down and hurt and to hurl yourself back into the fight like you feel no pain at all. Anger focuses the mind completely on one point. It makes you undistractable. It concentrates you like a laser beam. And if you want success with women, if you want to energize yourself to approach, and particularly if you want to numb yourself to the rejection and the pain that it generates, which you are absolutely going to need to do, then anger is actually absolutely vital to this process. So when a girl rejects you, when multiple girls reject you, most people think that's bad. It's actually good. Why? Because when you get home the following morning, when you wake up, you remember what happened the night before, the anger and frustration you feel towards that girl for snubbing you is actually very, very easy to transmute into action. And this is like mythical. This is one of the major plot points in so many stories, both fictional stories and real life stories. What motivates a guy to actually get off his ass and go start achieving shit like a villain? It's when some girl snubs him. It's when he gets slighted at the social function. Think about Mark Zuckerberg in that movie when his girlfriend dumps him. That's what sparks his rise to being a billionaire. Or think of Trump at the correspondence dinner when Obama was mocking him, making him the butt of the joke in front of all these people. That single moment changed the course of history. Spite fuels exceptional achievement probably more than any other negative emotion. And you can use this in success with women. Rejections are your friend. Getting snubbed and ignored is your friend. Why? Because you can use that anger, use that fury that it gives you to generate a massive amount of energy to take action and win and prove those people wrong. So when you get rejected, the correct move is not to numb yourself to it like most guys do. In other words, do not block out the pain with alcohol or with drugs. Don't numb yourself to it with masturbation. Very common ways guys deal with being rejected, but the problem is, again, that dulls your edge, that dulls your anger, and we actually want that anger. We want that negativity. We want that hate, and we want to keep the hate alive so that we can transmute it and channel it into action. In Diamond Vehicle Buddhism, a big part is played by the transmutation of anger and hatred specifically, and they say that the wisdom component of anger, in other words, the diamantine core of anger and its relation to enlightenment, is that pure anger allowed to flow without hindrance or blockage. This is essentially what gives you clarity. The way they put it is they say anger gives you mirror-like wisdom. And by mirror-like, they mean something that's totally clear. Lets you see things and see your situation clearly. And you'll notice this when you're angry. Angry about being rejected by a girl or being flaked or snubbed in some way. The anger you feel from this, if you let it flow freely, if you surrender to the anger and embrace it, if you don't try to numb it or block it off, but actually just feel the sensations in your body and be present with them. That is actually what lets you see your situation with complete clarity for the first time. You're not in a haze of apathy. You're not distracted by a dozen different things anymore. You're finally clear about what your situation really is with girls, which is that basically you suck shit and they think you're a loser. And from that position of clarity, you will finally feel the actual motivation and have the energy and the zeal, the vim, the vigor you need to actually take action and change things in this area of your life. And only anger can actually give this to you. As I've said before, the problem with most of you guys is you're just not fucking angry enough yet. Now, on this idea of anger and wrath, I want to clarify something very, very important here. I'm saying when you get rejected by a girl, you should let yourself feel whatever negative emotions arise. Now, frequently, this will initially be kind of a disappointment or a sadness, but this will usually transform into anger and rage kind of on its own if you don't block it, which is good. That's actually what we want. We want anger. We don't want sadness because we can use anger, but we can't really use sadness. But fortunately, the male biology is set up in such a way that when you're sad about being rejected by a girl, this will usually quite quickly transform into anger. Again, assuming you don't block it artificially or you don't numb yourself to it using masturbation, alcohol, etc. And now you want to transmute that anger. In other words, you want to use the energy, use the frustration, use this intensity you now have, and you want to channel those into approaching women and improving your game. You know, improving your skill, learning whatever it is you need to learn to actually get results next time. But do not misunderstand me here. When I say you need to use your anger, use your hate, let the hate flow through you, I'm not saying that you should direct that anger at the girl who rejected you, okay? This is a really important distinction. When a girl's mean to you, do not blow up at her. Don't yell at her. Don't shout at her. Never, ever emotionally react to something negative that a girl does towards you. Always stay in control. Always stay ice cold. Externally, you want to play the role of being emotionally non-reactive. Internally, however, you want to actually allow and embrace that emotion of anger and hatred to flow through you, but you don't direct it at the girl herself. You understand? Never get mad at a girl. You never shout at her, never get butthurt, never give her a piece of your mind or anything like that. That's super fucking weak. It makes you look like a complete loser, a complete beta. Never ever do that. So when I talk about using anger, embracing anger, this is an internal process, not an external one. It's an internal alchemical practice. When a girl makes you angry, you never show her you're angry. You smile. You remain polite, cordial. You walk away, you leave her. But that anger you're now feeling, you don't try to suppress it. You don't try to tamp it down. You let the flames of that anger consume you and you stay present with the sensations of it. This is the alchemical process. And this is what gives you the energy, the gold you need to transform yourself, take action, and work on improving and getting better. You know, when a girl rejects me, say I approach her at a bar and she's mean to me, like if she said like, go away, or, you know, I don't want to talk to you. The way I respond to that always, the way I've trained myself to respond to that is externally, I'm extremely polite. I'm cordial. I'm very classy about it. You know, most guys get angry visibly. They get butthurt. They get sad. But when a girl rejects me, when she tells me go away or, you know, I don't want to talk to you, what I do is stand there in silence, still looking her in the eye. I pause to take a deep breath. I smile, a genuine, warm smile. And while I'm smiling at her, while I'm looking her in the eye, I say, I understand. Have a great night. And then I walk away. It's very cordial, very classy, very emotionally non-reactive. And there's something very debonair and kind of worldly about taking a rejection this way.
Stay where you are.
I can assure you my intentions are strictly honorable.
When you can take a rejection like this and remain polite, remain cordial and warm, it actually makes you look very, very high value. But that's actually beside the point. You know, the real point I'm making is when I get rejected in this way, on an external level, in terms of my actual actions, I appear to be completely in control of myself. I seem to be completely non-reactive, detached, kind of above it all. And for that girl and for anyone watching, you really would think that I'm a fully enlightened Buddha, that I have no ego whatsoever. And like I said, I have trained myself to make it look that way, to be a good actor. But in fact, internally, in that moment, I am seething with rage.
Beneath our poised appearance, we are completely out of control.
Although I appear to be calm and courteous, I am actually boiling over with hatred and anger. And when I am fueled by that current of anger, that current of spite, I become unstoppable. And not necessarily right away. You know, the rejection does weaken me a bit in the moment. But usually the next day, the sadness or the offense of that rejection is transformed into a holy and purifying fire. And when I am fueled by that fire, I can then ride that lightning and that current of anger and allow it to generate action. And ultimately, it comes from a feeling of like, enough is enough. You know, like enough around here. Enough of being a little pussy wandering around and not approaching or approaching half-heartedly. I'm going to approach and I'm going to do it with some fucking force behind it, with some actual potency. I'm going to put some passion into everything I do and into every word that I say. And so now the following night, when I see that first hot girl of the night and I step to her, I have a level of intensity to me that is actually highly magnetic. It's like, hey, who the fuck are you? Piercing eye contact, loud, clear voice. cutting through the noise. And it's like, boom, that's that aura. That's that personal intensity, that passion that the girl is hooked by immediately. Okay, the fourth and final fuel of the dark side, the final priceless jewel of Buddhist sorcery, tantric black magic, is of course lust, sexual desire. Now, as I said earlier, lust is actually expensive. Lust is a very powerful form of fuel and energy, but it's not actually as easily accessible as people think it is. And what I mean by that is, let's say you've been working all week and you go out Friday night to meet some women. You go to a bar and there's tons of women there. Some of them are fat, some of them are cute. Maybe you see one or two, actually hot girls. But if we're being honest, do you actually feel lust in that situation? Like, are you actually physically hard and erect in your pants? No, and you rarely will be. Now, that being said, lust and sexual desire does play a hugely important role in motivating you to take action, but it generally only begins to come into play further along the line than people think. So I'll give you an example. If you're going out a lot and if you're approaching, some girls, will reject you. That's good because you can convert the pain that makes you feel into anger, which becomes energy and effective action. But occasionally you will meet a girl who actually likes you. You'll approach some girl and she's actually friendly and it's going well. But does that mean you'll actually have sex with her? Usually not. And the reason why is that you didn't have the killer instinct it takes to actually close the deal. When most guys meet a girl they like, what do? So, can I have your number? The girl's like, yeah, sure, of course. She gives you her number or her Instagram. You walk away feeling happy, proud of yourself, excited to go on a date with her. But of course, what happens when you contact her? No response. Flake, ghosted. And on this basis, a lot of guys conclude that cold approach doesn't work or that it's not worth it. And they're actually right. If you approach girls with the aim of taking their phone number, then it usually won't work and it isn't worth it. The phone number, assuming you even get it, will usually flake from a pure cold approach. If you want to get a phone number from cold approach that doesn't flake, the only way of doing that reliably is to have sex with the girl the same night you meet her. And I don't want to go off on a tangent about this because it's not actually part of our main theme today, but this is actually a very important point to emphasize and which you've got to understand if you want to know how to transmute lust effectively to get sex. So just bear with me for a second. It might seem like this is a tangent, but it's not. This is vital to understand and get through your head. If you want to succeed with women, if you want to have sex with hot girls, if you want to even get a wife or a girlfriend, you are going to have to learn the skill of sleeping with girls the same night you meet them. In other words, you cannot get consistent success with this if all you do is take girls' phone numbers and then walk away. Now, you will get some success with numbers, of course, like if you're approaching 10 or 20 or 30 girls a week and you're getting, say, 5 phone numbers a week, odds are, probably one of those girls will convert into an actual date instead of flaking on you. So if you're willing to do a huge number of approaches, you can make taking phone numbers work. But for me personally, I only started to get real success with women when I stopped taking girls' phone numbers. I actually banned myself from doing it for a period of about 2 years. And I started focusing entirely on how can I get her to come home with me and have sex with her tonight. And since that time, I've brought home dozens upon dozens of girls the same night I met them. And 90% of the time, if the girl's willing to come home with me, we usually do have sex that night. Or if we don't, then the girl is always happy to come over again another night and we always hook up on the second meeting. And so for me now, there's virtually no more flakes, no more ghosting, because I generally won't even take a girl's phone number until I've her anyway. So, if you watch my content, you might notice that I talk about the same day lay a lot, having sex with a woman the same night I meet her. And the reason I do that is not because I'm some kind of sex addict who needs sex right now. I'm begging you to understand this. If it were up to me, I would actually love to, just approach a girl, chat to her for a while, take her number, text her a few days later, go on a date with her. The problem is that doesn't work, okay? It doesn't work because girls flake and you have to get this through your head. I would love to do it that way. I would actually prefer to play the game that way. When I first meet a girl, I don't necessarily want to spend an hour with her right away and then have sex with her immediately. But the girls need you to do that for them. Otherwise, they'll end up flaking. Do you understand? I don't have sex with the girls the same night because I necessarily want to or I prefer that. I do it and I learn the skills to make that happen because I learned through painful, agonizing trial and error that it doesn't matter how good your connection was with the girl. It doesn't matter how good your game was or how much she liked you in the initial interaction. Once you take her contact details and walk away, there's a 90% chance you are never going to see her again. Ever. It's fucking over. Doesn't matter how much she seemed to like you. Doesn't matter how solid the number seemed. Once you walk away from a girl who you cold approached without having had sex with her, you need to categorize that in your mind as a failure. You're never seeing her again. If you do see her again, if by some miracle you text her the next day and she actually does reply and does meet you for a date, that is an exceptionally lucky circumstance, but it's not something you can rely on. Not if you want consistent results with this. If you want actual results, if you want sex with a lot of girls, if you want hot girlfriends and buddies, you must learn the skills of making sex happen the same night you meet the girl. Why? Because fundamentally, when a girl has sex with you, that's the ultimate emotional investment she can make into you. And so it becomes what in psychology they call sunk cost bias. Meaning, when you make a big investment into something, a big investment of your time or your effort or your dignity, you tend to want a return on that investment. And so now you won't abandon the thing or walk away from it so easily because you'd feel foolish. This is what happens when a girl sleeps with you, particularly if you've just met. It's like a sunk cost in her mind. It's a huge emotional investment. It's an investment of her vulnerability, even of her dignity in a sense. And so after you sleep with her, she's very, very unlikely to flake you afterwards. So all of this is to say, you need to master the art of the same day lay. You need to develop the skills to make sex happen the same night you meet the girl. And this comes down to doing 3 simple things. There are just 3 things you need to do to have sex with a girl the same night you meet her. I'm going to tell you what they are in just a second. Before we get to that, I just want to put a quick reminder here. In case you haven't done it yet, I'm giving you a free book today as a thank you for watching this far in the video. It's a little user manual I wrote called The Ultimate Guide to Making Beautiful Women Approach You First for Sex, no matter your looks, age, or money. If you haven't downloaded this already, pause the video now, click the link in the description, and put in your email address in the next page, and I will send you this free book right away. Again, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be giving this away for free. I'm thinking about actually creating a different free gift to give people for signing up to the newsletter. So when that happens, this one will go into retirement. It'll be locked away in the vault. You'll never get another chance to get it again, or I'll start charging for it. So if you want this book while I'm still giving it away for free, make sure to grab it right now while you still can. Again, click the link below to do that now. Girls never used to approach me, despite the fact that I used to be a lot better looking in my youth. I had a lot more hair, and yet now girls approach me literally almost every night I go out. And this makes getting laid extremely fucking easy, because it's obviously a lot easier when she's the one who hits on you first. And any man can make this happen if you simply start doing these 5 tricks I'm going to tell you. So get this book now to learn exactly how. Click the link in the description, put your email address in, and when you do that, you're also going to be signed up for my ass-kicking, girl-getting, perfect 10-pulling, dime-piece dazzling email newsletter, the greatest newsletter on the internet, the Mike Haynes letter. That is a free lifetime subscription with your free copy of Make Women Approach You. To get that while it's free, just click the link below. All right, now back to the video. So whether she approaches you first or you approach her first, as we were saying, the fact of the matter is this: if you want to get actual results, meaning sex, girls who call you back, girls who are desperate to meet up with you again, they're not flaking you, they're not ghosting you ever. If you want that, you need to learn how to sleep with the girl the same night you meet her. Now, there are 3 rules you must follow in order to make that happen. The good news is that having same night sex with the girl you just met is actually a lot easier than you'd imagine. Girls are horny. They may not admit it publicly, but they do want sex just like you. And when you meet a girl who's into you, if you do these 3 things I'm about to say, you will have same night sex with her almost every time. So what are these 3 rules? Number 1, longer interactions. This is something a lot of the cold approach guys on YouTube do not understand. They don't do it. They have these short 5-minute interactions. It doesn't work. When you approach a girl and it's actually going well, if she seems to like you, if she's friendly, if you have a good connection, if it's easy to talk to her, you basically now want to switch gears here and go from approaching mode into pulling mode. If you follow my advice up to now and you're fueled by these 4 energies, you've probably been doing a lot of approaching. You've been building a lot of momentum, and you might have been having a lot of shorter interactions, which is fine. Like say you're at the bar, you've approached 5 or 6 girls, and you might have only been talking to each one for a couple of minutes each, if even that. But now, when you actually meet that girl, you get a sense that it's on here. What you want to do is switch gears. And this means settling in and bracing yourself for a long interaction. To sleep with a girl the same night, you're generally going to need to spend anywhere from 30 minutes to about an hour and a half with her in that venue before she's going to be comfortable enough to go home with you. And that means you need to adjust and calibrate here. It's no longer about having a short 5-minute interaction and being highly flashy, energetic, using game, etc. What you want to do now is prepare for a long interaction, which is lower energy, lower effort, more chill. So that's step 1 of getting the same night lay. Focus on having a long interaction with the girl. Mentally prepare yourself for that. Because if you've been doing a lot of approaching and having these short interactions, it can be kind of a strange gear shift, internally, to be like, okay, no, I'm sticking with this girl now. Whatever happens, I'm not leaving her side. We're together now. It's no longer me going around and talking to all these different people. Now it's actually us. It's me and this girl, and we're together in a kind of unit now. We're a couple. So you want to create that us dynamic with the girl, that us frame. And that actually has to start in your own head first before it starts in hers. Now, the second thing you need to do to create a same night lay is the old school pickup artist tactic of multiple location changes or venue bouncing. So, for example, if you meet a girl at a bar or club, you basically want to move her around to as many different locations within that venue as possible. Don't just stay in the same spot where you first approached her. Instead, when it's going well, after about 5 minutes of chatting or whatever, what you do is hold your arm out, have her loop her arm through yours, tell her, come with me. Start walking somewhere else in the venue. Could be the dance floor, bar, smoking area, patio. A booth or a couch where you can sit down beside each other is best. That is the ideal. So when it's going well with the girl, lead her to come sit down with you there or somewhere else in the venue. The only important thing is that you lead her somewhere else. And this is because the more different environments the girl experiences with you, the longer she'll feel like she's known you for. This is called time traveling or time warping, and it is absolutely vital to master if you want to get same night sex with the girl you just met. You have to create the perception, the illusion that you two have known each other for longer than you actually have, and that's what moving her around to lots of different locations actually does in the brain. It kind of hacks the mind's familiarity mechanism, because basically the more different locations you've been in with the person, the longer it feels like you've known them, even if you haven't actually known each other for very long at all. And this is not a theory. We've tested this with thousands of interactions. It's a proven fact by now. If you don't believe it, try it yourself and you'll find that it works. Just start moving girls around. You'll be amazed how much your percentage of girls who want to go home with you goes up after that. Okay, then the third and final thing you must do to have same night sex with a girl you just met is you have to ask for it. Now, you do not do this by asking for it directly. You do not say, hey, I want to come back to my place and have sex. That will never work, because even if the girl actually does want to, saying yes to that will make her look and feel like too much of a slut. Again, it creates cognitive dissonance. So when you ask the girl to come home with you, you always want to do this using plausible deniability, meaning you know what the deal is, she knows what the deal is, but you don't explicitly say you're going back to your place to have sex. Instead, you say something like, let's go back to my place for a drink. Now, if you follow the previous step, if you've been moving around a lot the whole night, the girl will often say yes. If she doesn't say yes, do not argue with her. Don't try to convince her. Just drop the topic completely for now and try again a little later. It's always great to throw in a risk reversal guarantee as well. In other words, say something like, look, it's only one drink, and if you don't like my place or you need to go home early or something, I'll pay for your Uber home. That will usually be enough to convince her, because now you've removed all the downside. All the risk is on your side of the fence, not hers. Okay, so bit of a tangent there, but it actually is very relevant to understand what I'm going to say next. Because as I said, if you want results in cold approach, you need to learn the art of getting same night sex. That's what creates emotional investment on the girl's part, so that she won't flake you after. She'll actually want to meet up with you again. You won't have to deal with flaky numbers, ghosting, texting, the fucking talking phase, all that bullshit. And again, to summarize, the way you turn an approach into a same day lay is basically, number one, spend a long time with that girl in that venue, minimum of 30 minutes, ideally an hour or longer. Number two, move her around a lot of locations in the venue. Number three, actually go for the pull. Don't just ask for the number. Tell her, let's go back to my place, or even just start leading her there without saying anything. She will very frequently follow you, no questions asked. Now, what I've just described here is how to play the game properly, how to actually get results. Not imaginary results like phone numbers that make you feel good but end up flaking, but actual results like sex with a real girl in your bed the same night you meet her, who then becomes a buddy, a girlfriend, or whatever. It's all about getting the same day lay. And to do that, you've got to take the right actions that produce that result. This means actually persisting rather than just taking your number and walking away, which is a lot easier if we're going to be honest. It also means manning up, being more decisive, and actually leading the girl, moving her, telling her, come with me, not just standing there passively talking to her like a limp dick and being completely passive about it. Those are the right actions. Those are the actions that actually produce the result you want, which is sex and seeing the girl again. Now, all that being said, just because you know how to have a one night stand with the girl now, are you always going to follow through and do the right things? When you meet a girl and it's going well, are you always going to force yourself to stay with her till the very end? Are you always going to have the wherewithal to proactively lead her around different environments with you? No, probably not. In reality, of course, it's not always going to go this smoothly. Real life is unpredictable. Events don't always unfold by the book. Obviously, you're not always going to be on top of your game every night. You're not always going to feel highly motivated to stay with that girl, to take initiative, to keep her talking, to lead her around. And so, frequently, it will happen that you approach a girl, or she even approaches you and she likes you. You could have had sex with her if you had actually committed to the process, if you had persisted enough, but for whatever reason, you didn't close the deal. You didn't persist. You didn't commit. Ultimately, it's because you just didn't want it badly enough. And so then ultimately what happens is you lose the girl. You never see her again, and not because she didn't like you, not because she rejected you, but simply because you didn't persist in the set. You didn't have that iron in you. You didn't have that killer instinct to see things through to the end. You didn't try your best. So what happens? The girl leaves, she goes home, or maybe even you leave, you actually walk away from her, you eject from the set early, you reject yourself, and you wind up going home alone that night once again. And it sucks. Okay. Now, what's going to happen to you the next morning? Again, if you're any kind of man at all, if you have any testosterone in your body whatsoever, the next morning when you wake up, when you remember what happened, you're going to get angry at yourself. You're going to get very, angry. You're going to get pissed because you're going to realize in that moment, I could have f***ed that girl last night. I could have f***ed her if I had just been a little more persistent. If I had just hung in there longer and gritted my teeth, I could be f***ing that girl right now. I could have her tight young body in my arms right now. I could be pounding her. I could be doing whatever I want to her, but I'm not because I just didn't have that fucking killer instinct to close, to seal the fucking deal. And it's agonizing. It's agonizing when you go through this because you were so close to getting sex, to getting a super hot girl, but it's just not good enough. Now, that emotion you're going to be feeling, it's frustration, it's anger, this time directed at yourself, but it is also lust. This is real lust. Real lust is a sense of frustration. It's a feeling of enormous irritation and kind of impatience, particularly if it's a lust you have no outlet for. You know, obviously, if you have a girl you can have sex with, then lust is a pleasant feeling. But if you don't have an outlet for it, if you don't have anywhere to channel that lust and effectively to neutralize it, then lust is actually a very, very unpleasant feeling. If you actually kind of break it down, it's a frustration. And it's particularly frustrating if you came so close to actually fucking a girl, but you didn't do it because you didn't persist enough. That's going to give you real, powerful, burning lust. And in that lust, which is mixed with anger, mixed with frustration, there is an enormous amount of energy. This emotion of lust and sexual frustration, this is like rocket fuel for motivating you to take action and be effective the next day you go out. So once again, same exact method here. You take that negative emotion, you take that lust, that frustration, that anger, you give it no way to escape, meaning no masturbation, no porn, no prostitutes, no meeting up with your existing girlfriends or buddies. Not if you want to go out again the next night and meet a new one. Give the lust nowhere else to go other than into approaching and taking action. Think of this like a river of lust, a river of frustration. That powerful current of energy wants to escape. It wants to be neutralized. And so the lust you're feeling is going to tell you, go jerk off to porn. Do not listen to it. Do not let it escape. You want to seal it within yourself using the hermetic seal. This is what alchemy is all about. That's why it's called a hermetic seal. A hermetic seal means a seal that's airtight. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. It's named after Hermes Trismegistus, the mythical founder of alchemy. And in alchemy, what they were really referring to with that was sexual energy, lust. You have to seal it inside yourself to not let it escape. This provides internal combustion. It also makes you magnetic to women. There is an electrical current associated with lust, with desire, as long as you don't let it release through masturbation. When you masturbate, when you ejaculate, you neutralize that current. The energy gets out, it escapes. We don't want that. We want to keep that energy inside us. We want to keep that current strong. That current gives us the power and the energy to take action. It also makes us magnetic to women, as I've talked about in many other videos. And I mean magnetic here in something approaching a literal physical sense, like in electromagnetism. Now, along with giving you aura and magnetism to women, this transmuted form of lust is also what gives you the burning desire to win, the burning desire for yourself. And this actually comes from failure, not from success. This is something most people don't understand. You don't get burning desire when everything's going well. You only get burning desire when you have tried and failed at something, usually repeatedly. That's when you hit that enough is enough point and you're like, you know what? This. Time to get serious here. That's when you actually take the action that lets you win. It doesn't come from success. It comes from failure, pain, from the pain of those close calls and near misses. Remember what I said earlier in the video that your main problem is actually apathy? You just don't want it badly enough? Well, guess what? When you've gone through all this bullshit that I've just laid out, when you've gone through all this pain, disappointment, and heartbreak and frustration, now you're actually going to want the result badly, guaranteed. It's just how men are wired. So those are the 4 priceless treasures of the dark side. Once again, they are lust, anger, envy, pride. And when you go out and approach, or when you try to approach, you're going to experience all of these, the whole spectrum. I've kind of separated these out here and delineated them into different emotions, but really they all overlap. They're all related and connected to each other. And when you're failing to get the women you want, you're experiencing some mixture of these, and that's actually good. That's what you want, because only these powerful, radiant, black energies of hatred, frustration, desire, and so forth can actually motivate you to take the action that's required. And the combination of all these together, envy, lust, anger, etc., when these are combined, they produce a kind of hybrid energy that's even more powerful and motivating than each of them are individually. Like maybe you go out, you see all these girls in their skimpy outfits, that's lust. Maybe you see a couple, a girl and a guy, you really want the girl, you envy the guy, that's obviously envy, jealousy. You're angry at yourself for not approaching that night. Maybe you're pissed at some girl for rejecting you or snubbing you. All these negative emotions are going to mix together. They're going to inflame you the following day. And if you're any kind of a man at all, again, if you have any testosterone in your blood whatsoever, this is going to be highly fucking motivating to get you to actually go out again the next night and get after it. But this time, when you're fueled by that negativity and by that darkness, you will be unstoppable, because now, like I said, there is no more approach anxiety. There's no more approach apathy. These things are completely overpowered by this electrifying current of desire and fury that you now feel. And when you're fueled by that, the right actions become almost automatic, because now they're coming from a place of genuine desire. It's not like, oh, like, what does the next step in the pickup manual say to do? No, it's automatic. It's like you see the girl, desire, lust. You go over there immediately, straight line, decisive, no hesitation. Hey, who the fuck are you? Because like, oh, hey, my name is, yeah, great, very interesting. Yeah, you're kind of cute, but I'm not sure about that shirt. Little too red. Come over here with me for a second. Let's get a drink. And so now you're running on instinct, because you have a real organic desire, real lust, a burning desire to win and to actually that girl. And when you're coming from that place of genuine desire, everything just works. You do the right things, you take the right actions, you approach, you escalate, you lead her around, you persist through awkward moments or awkward silences. You don't give up so easily, you're not so easily stopped. And when the time comes, you tell her, let's go get a drink at mine. You bring her home with you and enjoy the fruits of your labor. And it's the best feeling in the world. It's the sweetest victory you'll ever taste. Not necessarily because the sex is so good or anything, but because you have the deep sense of satisfaction and inner peace that comes from knowing that you did your best. You gave it 100%. You fought the good fight. You saw things through to the end. You didn't quit, and you won as a result. You created something out of nothing, which is what cold approach pickup is really all about. It is alchemy. It's transmuting your thoughts, your desires, your wishes into concrete reality. It's the transmutation of a wish into a fact. You started off with nothing, sitting at home, no girl, no prospects for the night, but you went out, you took action, you fought hard, and you gave it everything you had. And you brought home a cute little vixen to be your sexual plaything for the next few months, or even just for the night. And you made that happen. No one else. And that's alchemy. That's transmutation. That's magic. It's the highest level of transmutation. On this channel, we talk about transmuting desire into magnetism. And in this video, we talked about transmuting negative emotions into energy. If you master those two forms of transmutation, you then unlock the third and highest form of transmutation, which is the transmutation of your thoughts, your wishes, into concrete realities. And that is what magic is, by the way. That is what the occult is actually about. It's not about worshiping demons or drawing pentagrams or lighting candles. Magic is about the transmutation of will into fact. It's the conversion of a thought, a desire, a wish, which only exists in your own mind, into a concrete and tangible reality which you can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. As Aleister Crowley put it, magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. Now, whether you say incantations and spells or wave a wand around or pray to a god or not while you're doing that is absolutely irrelevant. True magic, the only magic, is achievement. It's in doing. If a wish has been converted into a fact by an effort of will, then magic has been done. So, in this video, I showed you how to have sex with the girl you just met using Buddhist sorcery. This is the secret. This is the edge I've used for half a decade now to pull girls who are way out of my league. At this point, I've definitely hooked up with over 100 girls or more using the mindsets and principles I've shown you here, although I've never kept count. But I started off doing this, it was mainly through me approaching women. This whole video has really been about how to approach women, how to motivate yourself to approach women. And I love approaching women. It's hard at first if you haven't done it in a few days, but once you get into the groove, it's actually a lot of fun. It's one of the best thrills there is on earth. Approaching girls, getting that dominance, that aura that it gives you. However, kind of by accident, several years ago, I actually stumbled on the secret to make women approach me, which is ironic because I actually love approaching women, so I didn't even really need this. But I started doing a few things, and I noticed immediately that whenever I went out, women were actually hitting on me a fair amount of the time now. I would typically get approached by maybe 1 or 2 girls a night, and sometimes it was chubby girls or girls who I wasn't that excited about, but occasionally it would actually be a pretty cute girl. And so I put down what I was doing in a short little book that I banged out in about a week. It was called The Ultimate Guide to Making Women Approach You. And funny enough, actually after I wrote that, women started approaching me a lot more. And now, strangely enough, I was actually getting approached by very hot chicks in many cases. And I think what it was that when I actually clarified exactly what it was that I was doing and put it into a system, it made it much easier to kind of trigger that result at will to some extent. And now I get approached by very beautiful girls quite often. The last 3 girls I had sex with all approached me first. They all started the conversation first. They kind of did all the work. I just basically laid back and let them chase me. And these were all hot girls, early to mid 20s, slim, pretty, great graceful, tight bodies, well-dressed, well-educated, cool chicks. And it's to the point where I could probably almost never approach a girl again and just go outside and have girls come up to me, and I could probably pretty much have a harem of girls just by doing that and never do another cold approach. Like I said, I love cold approach for the personal development aspects of it, but it sure does make it a hell of a lot easier to get laid when the girl approaches you first. So if you'd like to know how to make that happen, if you want to know how to make a girl hit on you first, I'm going to show you the secret of that in my free book. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Making Women Approach You. Click the link in the description below to download that for free right now. When you click that link and put in your email address, you'll also be signed up to my free email newsletter with new content from me every single day. The newsletter is where I post all my best stuff, my uncensored stuff that I can't post on YouTube because it's too explicit or too controversial. So click the link below, get your free book now while you still can. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the other side.